Hi, Dr. Mindy Peltz. So thankful for all our time together, but just extra grateful for this time with you today. So pumped to do this video. We're going to just hit it. We're going to talk about the 5 amazing ways to boost your immune system now or anytime. And before we get started, I want to give you a proper introduction, even though I know probably—
I was going to say, no, I'm not the proper introduction kind of gal. I'm like, let's just go.
Okay.
But you can, if you want, you can.
Yes. Anyone I think that follows me absolutely follows you and knows your stuff. Mindy's got an incredible YouTube channel. She is a chiropractor who specializes in functional medicine. She's a pioneer in the field of fasting and detoxification, does a ton of amazing stuff on women and our hormones during fasting. She's written 3 best-selling books. Just happened to write her other one. I hadn't heard from you for like 2 weeks, and all of a sudden you have another book out. So one is called The Menopause Reset, one's called The Reset Factor, one's called The Reset Kitchen, and the next one, like I said, is specifically on fasting for women. You guys have to check out her YouTube channel, her new-ish podcast, The Resetter Podcast. We'll link everything below. But my favorite thing about Mindy is you are one of the most kind and humble people that I know, and you're just all about educating people and sharing your love and knowledge. So I always love our time together.
Oh, that's the best introduction I could have ever gotten. So thank you. I appreciate that. And
Awesome.
yes, I agree. When I looked at my schedule this week, I was like, oh, I'm going to chat with Melissa on Tuesday. This is going to be great. So thank you for having me.
It's always so fun. And so I know we really wanted to think about what we were going to talk about today. And it just feels like such an important and appropriate topic. You know, I think talking about immune system and things that we can do naturally at any time is super important. And I think now more than ever, you know, I feel like I constantly want to remind people, and I know you feel the same, our bodies are naturally very, very healthy and very, very powerful. And especially when we surround it with the most appropriate environment, viruses are something that we're literally designed to be around, and we should be able to fight off without a problem. So reminding people of that is really important. And then also, I know we wanted to give people really 5 easy take-home steps that they can implement to boost their immune system.
Yeah. For starters, you know, like Murphy's Law. So just as we sit down to do that, there's a guy jackhammering outside my window. So let me know if you can't hear me. I'm going to try to move in instantly.
Also, one of the things about boosting your immune system is blocking stress.
That's right. Exactly. I'm sending him love right now and trying to manifest that it's a lunch break soon.
You know, someone once told me anybody can do yoga at the ocean, but can you do yoga in the middle of chaos? And so whenever stuff like that comes up, it's like, well, of course I could be peaceful and do a great interview with nothing going on, but what happens when there's a jackhammer or you know, anytime in our life when we're trying to be mindful and balanced and as calm as possible, especially in times like we're living in right now. So you go, jackhammer man.
I love it. So to answer your question, as you were talking, I was thinking, I think that everything we learned about the immune system is wrong. Like the way we were taught to look at our immune system is actually really backwards. And this is why we are not getting out of this pandemic very quickly, because our approach to the immune system isn't working anymore because viruses are getting more virulent and stronger than ever. So it's kind of like, I'm going to equate it because this is my gig. I'm going to equate it to menopause. I always say when you hit 40 and over and your ovaries are shutting down, your lifestyle has to change. And what you used to be able to do at 30, you're not going to yield the same result at 45. I think in the immune system, we're having the same crisis. That what we used to be able to do, throw antibiotics and vaccines and antiseptic soap and do all these things at the microbial world, let's put it, viruses, bacteria, that worked for us 30, 40 years ago. But because we've had no respect for it, these viruses are just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and our old techniques are not working. So just like the 45-year-old can't exercise the same way her 30-year-old version did, the human in today's world has to approach this different. And I think that's the best place to start the conversation, because out of that, what I'm like so excited about is when you start to realize that you have to take care of your health different in order to survive COVID, you also realize that, guess what? That same way you're not going to get cancer, you're not going to get an autoimmune condition, your chronic pain's going to go away, you're going to lose weight, you're going to be happier, depression's going to go away, like all the things that you need to know on how to survive COVID is going to prevent all these other diseases. It's such a cool opportunity.
Absolutely. I love that. And you just used the word I was going to use too. This is an amazing opportunity. It's a challenge and it's an opportunity, because all the things that we need to do during this time are things that are just going to help us for the long run. So I love that. All right. So let's hit it, Mindy. Let's go with our top 5 things right now that are pretty easy, attainable things for everybody, as far as boosting the immune system. So one of our favorites, both of our favorites, is fasting. Yeah. I love fasting. We run our private Stemnomic group. So a bunch of people that are hearing this are expert fasters. I know you've got a huge fasting community. You run fast training 1 week throughout each month, right? Yep. Where for free, you teach people how to fast. Yep. So this is an incredible resource. Tell me about it.
So here's the easiest way to understand fasting when it comes to the immune system is that let's just use viruses, for example. Viruses don't have their own way to create energy. So in some sense, we can kill them by not allowing them to gain momentum through energy. So when they come into our bodies, they are a bit parasitic in the sense that they have to run off of our energy system. And we have 2 energy systems. We have one that creates energy from sugar and one that creates energy from fat. This is the way we know these energy systems, is one's you're a sugar burner or you're a fat burner. If a virus comes into a sugar burning cell, it will have a heyday, and you are giving that virus fuel, and now it can replicate like crazy. If that same virus comes into a cell that is a fat burner, it looks around the cell and it's like, there is nothing here for me to get energized off of, and it will die. So there was an incredible study that was done. I brought it to my YouTube channel. It came out last October, and it showed that when you are operating as a fat burner, you stop viral replication. So like, why wasn't that on the front page of the newspaper? Why aren't we talking about that? So then step number 1, and it's free, is let's all learn how to be fat burners. And the best way to do that is through fasting. That's your first step in. It doesn't mean, like, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, like I tried giving sugar up, it didn't work for me. I'm asking you to like think beyond that. What I want you to think about is, okay, well, what if you take your diet that's making you a sugar burner and you attach intermittent fasting to it, and you start fasting every day 13 to 15 hours. Now you're moving 1 step closer to being a fat burner. And then what if, now that you're 1 step closer, what if you just took out some refined flours? What if you took out the refined carbohydrates? Now you're 3 steps closer to a fat burner. So we can sort of back our way into this, but the best thing we can do right now is all become fat burners.
Amazing. Well, and I would imagine that's got some pretty heavy duty effect on cancer cells too.
Same thing. That's what I mean, is like the opportunity. So I don't know about you, but I spent last year like walking around like, what is going on in the world? Like the first couple of months, I was actually like, oh my God, everybody cares about their health. This is so exciting. I've been trying to get people to care about their health forever, and now everybody cares about it. And then we morphed into the masking wars. And then we morphed into the pandemic and quarantine wars. And I'm like, no, the conversation is not going to benefit us there. And honestly, in the fall, I went into sort of a dark place, and I was like, we're talking about this completely wrong. We're completely addressing this wrong, and other countries are coming out of this. We're not. Why is this? And what I'm seeing now, where we sit today, and depending on when you watch this interview, it's February, people are coming back to where we were a year ago. And they're like, maybe I need to think about my own immune system. Maybe, we're seeing that the vaccine is not as effective as we originally thought. We're seeing that there are new variants coming out, that it's not, Africa just shut down their vaccine program because the AstraZeneca vaccine is showing to not be effective for these new variants. So we're back with the initial discussion, which is we are not as smart as the viral world. So we have to think like a virus. So if we want to think like a virus, let's start by not giving it a fuel source.
Yeah, and one of the things you say often is be a bad host.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. It makes so much sense. Yeah, and another analogy that we use a lot is this is the game, right? So this is, whether it's the Super Bowl or the World Series, this is the game. You don't train for the game when you're in the game. So meaning we don't address our health during a time that's considered to many to be a health crisis, however you want to look at it. Yep. So with that, let's go into metabolic syndrome. Let's go into addressing metabolic syndrome as one of the other really important things to do for immune system.
Yeah. So back in March and April of 2020, I started to see the research emerging that the coronavirus really hides itself in sugar. So not only does it fuel itself in sugar, but it camouflages itself so that your immune system doesn't know it's there. So I started to dive into metabolic syndrome and trying to understand metabolic syndrome. Well, it turns out only 12% of Americans are metabolically fit. That is the crisis right there. Why are we why are we talking about this? And if you put 100 different doctors of different backgrounds in a room and you asked them, is there a connection between metabolic syndrome and the immune system? I would hope most of them would agree. Yet we're not talking about it. So what does it mean to be metabolically fit? If you're listening to this, I would encourage you to ask yourself, am I metabolically fit? And here what it is. You can eat food and be okay, and you can fast and be okay. You can click in and out of sugar burner, fat burner. You're not, and we see this in my community all the time. People get so obsessed with being fat burners that they think, oh, I'm never going back to being a sugar burner again. That's not what I'm saying. If you want to be metabolically fit, you need to be able to be a sugar burner and then a fat burner and a sugar burner and a fat burner. And this is where what you're teaching, what I'm teaching about quality of food and fasting and really using both of those to stay healthy, that is huge for fighting this virus.
Absolutely. And another term I know you've used is we're arming ourselves, and it's like a bulletproof vest. Those are the things that are our most effective defense against any virus. Again, whether it's now, whether it's 5 years from now, our bodies are designed to fight these things, and we just have to make sure that they're fit.
Right. Agree.
So essentially going back and forth from sugar burner to fat burner. So meaning if you have only fruit available, you can eat fruit and your body's fine with it. And if you have only fat available, or if you have no food available, you're fine with it. And one of the easiest ways I tell people to know if you're a fat burner or sugar burner is go a few hours without food and see how you feel. If you have sugar crashes throughout the day, your body is essentially running off sugar. Most people are, we've all kind of been raised that way, in the way that we've been taught about how to fuel ourselves. We are raised as sugar burners, and so there's no judgment there. But slowly, like you say, Mindy, clicking yourself over into more of a fat burning lifestyle and becoming more metabolically fit, maybe doing one thing each day or one thing each week or one thing each month, jumping in your fast training week. There's a ton of resources, on your platform. I have a few resources. YouTube is a plethora of information. Ignorance in this time is really a choice. You could probably literally go in there and type.
And it's not bliss. Ignorance is not bliss in this moment. It's actually, ignorance is fear. So if you're going to stay in a place where there's nothing you can do but mask and stay home and wait for the vaccine, then you're going to stay in fear. And the reason I want to point that out, I'm not dissing all of those things. I'm just saying that there's more to the story than you've been taught. So if you're living in fear, then get some knowledge, get out of ignorance, turn off the news. Like there's a whole nother panel of a frequency of information out there that's going to tell you how powerful you are.
Absolutely. And it becomes super empowering rather than scary.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And you do have to look for it, because that is all the main information right now are those 3 other things that just, regardless of if we feel they're effective or not, there's more to this story.
And I think I like this idea of let's arm ourselves with a bulletproof vest. Okay. What is that bulletproof vest? So it allows us to put more than just one thing in the bulletproof vest. Like, I've never worn a bulletproof vest, but I can imagine that there's a lot of different pieces that go into making a bulletproof vest effective. It's not just throw some fabric and thread together and then put it on. So we have to really think beyond the mask and beyond the quarantining, and ask ourselves, what else can we do to make sure that if we come in contact with this, we're not a good host?
Absolutely. So what vitamins would you put in your bulletproof vest? What would be your top 2?
Well, hands down, vitamin D. And can we just, next to metabolic syndrome, why the heck are more people not looking at their vitamin D levels? Like, okay, so let's ask what vitamin D, let's look at the statistics on it to start with. So there are so many different ways to look at this. I just heard this morning an incredible podcast with the guy who heads up a great YouTube to go watch is MedCram. And he is a pulmonary internist who is in the ICUs working on COVID patients day in and day out. And he said that the number one thing you can do to keep yourself out of the ICU is vitamin D. And he is a medical, like triple board certified, like research nut that's working on COVID patients. I don't know a better resource than that. And he told a story of how they found that when people came to the ICU, that if they gave them vitamin D right away, that they would go home right away, that their symptoms shut down immediately. And if they were not given vitamin D, that they had a longer stay and often led to death. I also have seen some statistics that if your vitamin D levels are above 30, and you come in contact with COVID, the chances of survival is like 98%. So you're great chance you're going to survive. If it's under 12, your chances of survival is 2%. So vitamin D is the absolute outlier, and we all need to check our levels and take our vitamin D.
Absolutely. And any negative side effects?
Yeah. So it's so interesting. Well said. So my son and I, my 18-year-old son and I had this discussion because I've been trying to understand the vaccine. Like it's a brand new vaccine. And I heard this guy talk about the bulletproof vest. And so I was telling my son the thoughts of this vaccine researcher. And he said, yeah, but the difference between that and vitamin D is when you put vitamin D in your bulletproof vest, it's not going to explode on you. But if you take the vaccine, there's still too many unknowns that you could put that bulletproof vest on and it could explode on you. Right. So no side effects you'd really have to mega dose vitamin D to have some bad ones.
Well, and again, like you were talking about at the beginning of this, do things that are going to help us anyway. So vitamin D has such a huge impact on cancer, female health, so many things. So super important. All right, give me another vitamin you'd put in your vest.
Well, the next one would be glutathione. I think that again, a lot of research early on said low glutathione levels will affect your immune system specifically against COVID-19. Okay, so let's ask the question, why does everybody have such low glutathione levels? Mm-hmm. What does glutathione do? Okay, so glutathione is it's the master antioxidant made by your mitochondria. Okay, so if the thing that produces glutathione is unhealthy, then why aren't we, is that contributing to why we're not making enough glutathione? And the answer to that is yes. So how do we know that our mitochondria are healthy? We're back at the discussion of, can you go without food? If you can't go without food, if you can't fast longer than 12, 13 hours, there's a good chance your mitochondria are unhealthy. And so, okay, so what do we need to do to get our mitochondria healthy? And there's really three things. We've got to watch our oils and make sure that our oils are not the inflammatory ones. We've got to look at our sugar load. So we got to make sure we're not a sugar burner, and we got to pull toxins out. So with a high toxic load, a high sugar diet, eating all the bad fats, we've now not only given the virus energy, but we have depleted our glutathione levels. So there's great research showing when you add glutathione back in, you add glutathione, you add vitamin D back in, you overcome the symptoms. Well, why don't we do that now?
Right. Why not? Why would it hurt?
Why not? And let's take out the bad fats. Let's watch our sugar. Let's become more metabolically fit. Let's take out the toxins. I mean, there's, when you start to unpack it, you go, oh my God, like I feel free. I can do so much. I don't have to live in fear.
Yes. And let's make this really easy for people. So 2 favorite oils, 2 least favorite oils. What would you say as far as mitochondrial health?
Oh, well, avocado oil. I love avocado oil is my favorite. And have you tried Andreas seed oils?
No.
Oh, he has a 5 seed oil that I just take in scoops. I would say that's my second favorite. And then I know you only told me 2, but I got to throw in more. MCT oil in my coffee makes it easier for me to become a fat burner and go into the ketogenic. Worst oils, partially hydrogenated and canola oil.
Yeah. So that's a tough one. We don't use them in our house. I know a lot of restaurants are using the canolas. So I know some people go as far as to only go to restaurants without canola. I'm not there yet. I find going out to eat is just super relaxing for me, but I know canola is pretty damaging. That's a big one. Okay.
Margarine, I think things, again, we got to look at like, okay, what are the practical things people are doing? Margarine, canola oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil. You know, I can tell you, even going to Whole Foods, when I stand in front of the chip aisle, I have to like search for the ones with the right oils, because you can give me an organic sweet potato chip, which is my favorite, but if you put a bad oil in it, you just made it a junk food.
Absolutely. Yep. So looking for canola oil on the labels is huge. That's in a lot of chips.
Yep.
All right. And how about any other barriers as far as your bulletproof vest? Is there anything, gut barriers, intestinal permeability?
So another really interesting thought that I have been noodling on recently is that the coronavirus also camouflages itself in human tissue. So this is why we have this delayed reaction. So once the virus, you're exposed to it, your immune system doesn't know that it's there all the time because it hides in sugar and it hides in your tissues. So it takes about 10 to 14 days for your immune system to identify it's there. By the time it identifies it's there and it goes after that, the virus, which is in your gut and in your lungs, that's the main place that this virus is living, it's now creating an immune response against that your tissue. This is why we're seeing so many long hauler type symptoms. And so anything that is like that tissue is going to be attacked. So we've got the thyroid, the brain, joints. So a lot of people with pre-existing autoimmune conditions, when they get exposed, even if they have a proper response, they're ending up with flare-ups. And there's one reason for that, and that is your barriers. So we've got to really work on fixing leaky gut. We've got to do breathing exercises so that we're detoxing our lungs every day. I even do the Restore nasal spray. We've got to work on barriers that protect our brain. So now more than ever, like bathe yourself in Restore or Ion Biome. Like that has to be your go-to supplement, I guess, alongside vitamin D and glutathione. But you've got to close those barriers up. And eating GMOs, eating pesticides, glyphosate, all of that is open the barriers. You start to see like the picture of why so many Americans are not are not handling this well. Like why the world isn't handling this well, because we have literally created the perfect human for this virus to invade.
Yeah, I think we're no longer in a time where, I don't know how to say this the best way, but, I think there's a lot of people that have chosen to live lives where they eat mostly organic and they feed their kids really clean food, the best that they can, the best that they can access. I think we're no longer in a place where that's as much of a choice to make.
Right.
It's more of a must, right? So again, I just want to say we are all in different financial places. And so I'm not saying everyone should always eat all organic or, we're all doing the best that we can. But I think hopefully the biggest takeaway from this is our food is really important.
Yeah.
And the quality of that food obviously plays a massive role in our health and our ability to fight anything, whether it's a virus that we're dealing with right now or things that we know over time are much bigger problems as far as our outcomes. So,
and to that point, I want to just make a point that we could use that as an excuse if we didn't have the financial resources to eat organic. But if you reprioritize some things, you may be surprised that you are able to spend money on the higher quality food. And let's talk about what that means, reprioritize. Well, instead of eating 6 meals a day, what if you only ate 2 meals a day? So let's learn how to fast. It's free. Let's teach everybody how to fast. Everybody should be 15, 17 hours of fasting every day. Let's compress that eating window. Now we've taken a big section off your breakfast and maybe even your lunch. We've pulled that away. So now you're only eating 2 meals. What you spent on breakfast and lunch, could you take that money and add it into eating an organic option for your dinner? And I think that's the little nuance we've got to go into, because it is really too bad that in order to eat healthy in our country, you have to have money. That's ridiculous. That should not be the case. But it is, as long as big agriculture and big pharma are in bed with the politicians, and we've got a very interesting system that applauds big ag and big pharma and keeps our food in a crappy place. But that doesn't mean we're a victim. We can still undo that. And how we can undo that is by compressing our eating window and then trying to make better choices. And if we can't make better choices, then at least compress your eating window so you can save some money on those.
Love it. Amazing points.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So those are our top 5. So fasting, getting metabolically fit, vitamin D, glutathione, and improving our intestinal barriers. Anything else to add to those before I ask you?
No, I feel like you need to make a little Instagram square with those. Those are good.
You are so good with the Instagram square.
If you don't do it, I'll do it, or we can do it together. But that is, if I could put the whole world in front of this interview, that would be like what I want people to know.
Those would be the Fab 5.
Yeah.
And they're pretty accessible. Like those aren't, for the most part, difficult things, and they're not expensive things.
Agreed.
Okay, so my question for you, Mindy, in this time of interesting time, what are...
What do we call this?
I just have so many words today. Today has just been a day where, people are just feeling less connected than ever. And I think people are on so many different pages as far as where we stand. And I think it's a really easy time to feel some yucky feels. So I want to know from you, what one thing are you doing every day to just stay elevated or sane? How are you staying sane?
Yeah, you want to pigeonhole me in one thing. I'm not a one thing kind of gal, but I'll try
I like one thing. You can say as many things as you want. If you asked me to say 3 things, I'm like, okay, 10 things later, did I hit 3?
Yeah, you're right, exactly.
I don't do well when you ask me those.
No. Okay, so let me kind of give it like a life vision idea, and then let me put it into an application. So the first thing I want people to realize is when you turn on the news, think of it as information is this big frequency coming at you. And when you turn on the news, doesn't matter which news station you're getting, you have narrowed your frequency and you're only getting a small piece of the information that's out there. And in order for all news stations, doesn't matter which one you're watching, in order for them to get you to keep coming back, they need to keep you in fear. And they need to keep you angry, and they need to keep you emotionally attached. So the first thing to understand is if you're feeling yucky, you got to step away from those things that are making you feel yucky. So the second piece of that is what do we do? And this is something I've really struggled with, is what do we do with relationships, people that are important to us that have opposing opinions? And do we start fighting about it? Do we cut them out of our lives? And I have decided that, again, I put them in that category. If they're living in fear, that's not really a place that I want to live. I do not want to live. I can live in and be informed. I can step in and be informed, but I don't want to be interested. I'm not interested in living in fear. So where do I go to not live in fear? Well, the first thing is I start every morning and I decide what goes into the mind. So I actually I'll go and look at Joe Dispenza's stuff. I'll listen to an interview with him. I will, Bruce Lipton. I'm bringing Bruce Lipton onto my podcast.
You got him. You want to know.
So I'm like super excited to chat with him. I want to talk about placebo and what like how people are getting sick because they think they're going to get sick. Like I have a whole bunch of thoughts. So I look at Bruce Lipton. God, there's a lot of other, like MedCram. I told you this guy who's this pulmonary internist who's working at ICU. He gets in and offers some really clinical things that are opportunities of hope. But I spend the first hour for sure making sure that I do not leave my house until I am in a state of hope and love. And if I'm not in that state, what do I got to do? Do I got to have a dance party in my kitchen? Do I need to call somebody and get lifted up? But I am not going, just like we don't want the virus to spread, I'm not stepping outside of my house and spreading fear. I will not partake in that experience. So that's really, and you and I talked about this, and I pick a word every year. Last year, my word was gratitude. And I laugh because I was thinking, yeah, well, the world gave me a lot to be grateful for. And this year, my word is rise. I'm not picking a side. I'm not going into negativity. I will not lose friendships over this. I will rise above the noise and stay in a place of love. If you look at every great spiritual leader, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, these are people that didn't get in the mud with the information. They didn't start arguing with people. They elevated the conversation. We need to elevate the conversation right now.
Love it. So important. So important. I do something similar. So, mine is being in a state of love before I leave the house or just even in the house. So, I used to do a power hour in the morning.
Yep.
Kind of get my energy going and vibrate on a high level. And my power hour was like journaling and writing and doing all these things that are just a little bit trickier now with 3 little people that wake up with me. And so I've had to kind of simplify, because for a while I was like, God, the world feels pretty heavy. At first, like you, I was like, people care about their health. And then it just started feeling like everyone was at odds with each other. And so it kind of felt heavy, and I'd wake up feeling that. And I felt like I didn't have access to these tools that I normally had access to. So now I keep it really simple. I do what makes me feel best. I do something that I love. I do something that makes me feel oxytocin. I know we've talked about that here and there. I snuggle Kaya, and that gives me oxytocin and love. And I really try to stay off social media in the morning, and my emails, I at least won't hop on until I'm in a better state and able to handle some of the stuff on there. One of the things that I do notice in this time, and that's become really prevalent lately, is that hurt people hurt people.
So true.
Right. And so I try to filter messages coming in, whether it's on social media or emails or interactions, that if someone's throwing something that feels hurtful, they're hurting about something. And so I always try to come at it with compassion and understanding. And I think that if we all can just try to work on ourselves and do whatever we can to not feel hurt or fear, to step into love, I think we're all going to be in a much better place. Or anger, right? Anger doesn't feel good.
Oh, no, a couple of thoughts on that. I was blessed to have a mentor that had 5 brain tumors in his brain, and he overcame them. He actually applied many of the techniques that we teach, and 5 years later, without chemotherapy, without drugs, the tumors were gone. And in that 5-year journey, I was blessed to have calls with him every week. And anytime I came with any kind of anger or finger pointing at people, he would stop me right there. And he would say, Mindy, your immune system does not have the luxury of an angry thought. Anger will shut your immune system down for at least 24 hours. It is like the most toxic thing to our immune systems. So the worst thing we can do right now is be angry with each other. The worst thing we can do is point fingers at each other. That is going to suppress the immune system, and it's going to take us deeper into this pandemic. So this is something I've been teaching my resetters is, how do you deal with people who have conflict in your family? I mean, my sister and I have vastly different approaches right now to how my 80-year-old parents should be taken care of. And so, but what we've done is really work to not point fingers at each other. And it's like I bring her the science and I say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. This is what I'm comfortable. I got mom and dad's vitamin D levels checked. I'm not comfortable with them getting the vaccine. I want 6 more months to see. This is what I'm seeing. And then she comes over here and says, well, this is what I'm seeing. And it's been we've been able to, again, come above the anger and the emotion and find a way to communicate. And the human race right now, we have that opportunity to do with all sides. And there is something, this is another thing I want to ask Bruce Lipton about. There is this thought that there is a disruption happening. And I know that we can look at disruption as being a political thing, but I actually think there's a breakdown in the way that the human race has been doing life. And in the messiness of that breakdown, we're going to lose some people. Some people are going to die, and it's going to be hurtful, and we're going to lose some friendships. But if we stay committed to love, if we stay committed to being kind humans, then what will come out of that breakdown is a more beautiful world than we could have ever imagined. Think about it. If 10 years from now, we look back at this moment in time and we go, oh my God, if this didn't happen and that didn't happen and that didn't happen, I would never be living this beautiful life that I'm living right now. And instead of clinging to our old life, instead of pointing fingers at people that aren't doing life the way you would do life, what if we all held the space that there's something beautiful emerging here? We just can't see it yet. And let's not get into the lower frequencies of anger and blame and guilt. Let's rise into this place of curiosity where we're like, what amazing thing is going to happen today? What incredible world is unfolding for the human race right now? If we all elevate to that, the world will be a better place, like immediately.
That's going to be incredible. So that will be Bruce Lipton on the Resetter podcast.
Yeah. I'm interviewing him on early April.
Awesome. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Good. All right, Mins. Well, I think we covered a bunch of stuff. I hope we gave our listeners some really good take-home stuff. I'll put a bunch of links below for access to your YouTube and your podcast and all that exciting stuff. And as always, thank you so much for spending time with me. I love sharing space with you.
Oh, no, it was such a joy. I already got an oxytocin boost seeing you on my schedule. And now I'm like, phew, I'm ready to go. This was awesome. So thank you for having me and the great work you're doing. I mean, this is a time for collective voices to come together and scream as loud as we can in a positive way. And I just appreciate what you guys are doing as well.
Thanks, Min. Means a lot. Love you.
Love you.